It is October, and one thing I always enjoy doing this time of year is playing what I think of as Halloween games. And few games encapsulate the spirit of Halloween better than the Castlevania series. Castlevania is quite easily one of my favorite game series of all time. Game for game, I probably like it even more than the Mega Man series. And as someone who is, for lack of a better word, obsessed with Mega Man, that is quite a statement. I'm sure I could spend all day talking about the various Castlevania games, but for the sake of brevity, today I'm just going to focus on my favorite game in the series, the original Castlevania for the NES, released in the US in 1987. At the risk of sounding hyperbolic, I have to say that Castlevania is a perfect game. Many of the later games in the series have surpassed it in various ways, but none have diminished the impact of the original game. Its graphics, while quaint by today's standards, still hold up very well, and it still has some of the very best music in the series. It also has a perfectly balanced difficulty level, which is to say that it's an incredibly challenging game, and yet very fair and forgiving at the same time. For example, how many games can you think of let you continue indefinitely at the start of the hardest boss fight in the game? So much has been said about this game over the years that I really don't feel that I have much to add. I will say that for as many times as I've played through it, I'm still amazed by the thoughtful stage design, how every elevated platform is justified by some logical background element, as opposed to the magical hovering structures of Mario and Mega Man games. I also love how connected each of the stages feel to one another, how the game follows a natural path from beginning to end. You start with a quick jaunt through the castle entrance, leading to a mostly vertical climb through the interior of the castle itself, followed by a harrowing trek across the crumbling outer walls. One detail I love here is that you can see Dracula's iconic clock tower in the background, but before you can reach it, the floor crumbles under your feet and you plummet into the flooded caverns below the castle. You ascend back into the castle proper through the dungeons, and finally reach the broken bridge work seen earlier in the game, connecting to the clock tower where Dracula lies in wait. One more note, every time I play through the game, I'm always on the lookout for secret items. By crouching or standing on specific tiles, you can make glowing treasures appear. They don't seem to serve any purpose other than increasing your score, but it's always exciting to find a new one, and I know that I haven't found them all. It seems that with most long-running video game series, there are so many changes and improvements made to the core formula during the sequels that it becomes increasingly difficult to go back and enjoy the original game in the series. But Castlevania is one of those rare instances where the first game still plays and feels just as good as it ever did, even compared to how far the series has come since then. Now, I know I said I was only going to talk about the original Castlevania, but I'm going to cheat a little bit and say a few words about one of its sequels. Super Castlevania 4. Despite being numbered 4th in the Castlevania series, it's generally understood that this is actually just a reimagining of the original NES game, although that's not obvious until you reach the game's final stages. Most of Super Castlevania actually takes place before you get to Dracula's castle, which is just one of the many changes Konami made with this game, not all of which were for the better. Most notably, they completely overhauled the play control. Simon can whip in all directions now, and he can also alter the trajectory of his jump while in the air. Sub-weapons have also been mapped to the shoulder buttons, instead of requiring you to hold up and attack to use them, meaning that you can throw your axes and boomerangs while going up and down the stairs. These changes alleviate many of the frustrations that people had with the first 3 games. But they had the adverse effect of almost completely stripping away the challenge the series is known for. If the first 3 games in the series were NES hard, then Super Castlevania is SN easy. I have to say that as easy as the bulk of this game is, the difficulty spike in the game's final stage comes out of nowhere. This climb through the last tower is absolutely maddening, and I hate it. But don't worry, once you get through this mess, the game puts the training wheels back on. Hey, thanks for the health recovery item, final boss. Also, why are you helping me? It should also be noted that this was a very early release for the Super Nintendo, and Super Castlevania seems to have taken upon itself the duty of showcasing the hardware advantages over the original NES. There are many extended sequences that seem to exist only to highlight the technical prowess of the Super Nintendo. Graphics. Graphics. Graphics! Once the novelty of seeing these effects for the first time wears off, though, it becomes much more obvious that this is simply style over substance. It throws off the game's pace and honestly makes it drag. It's because of these moments, combined with the fact that Super Castlevania is one of the most toothless entries to the series, that I often found myself just getting bored. Also, just about every other element in the game feels less than amazing. The graphics look very nice, but I don't really like the character designs, especially the skeletons, the most numerous enemy in the game. These don't look like Castlevania skeletons, these look derpy? Simon himself is a great-looking sprite, but he feels too big, so there's much more of a tendency to get surprised by enemies rushing in from off-screen. The music in the game, a highlight for many people it seems, just sounds off. It's really good music, don't get me wrong, but Castlevania is known for big, triumphant anthems like Vampire Killer. In Beginning. Not subdued, atmospheric mood music. Or jazz flutes. I can see why Super Castlevania is a favorite for so many people. It's definitely the most accessible game in the series, and I imagine that for many people, it's the only game in the original series that they've been able to beat. But for me, this isn't quite Castlevania, and Konami clearly saw things the same way, as they removed almost all of this game's improvements in the subsequent sequels, up until Symphony of the Night, that is. Despite how harshly I judge the game, I still really like Super Castlevania, and I often find myself coming back to it. I just don't enjoy it nearly as much as I do any of the first 3 games. That's right, any of them. But it's still a great game to play around Halloween. Or for that matter, any other time of the year.